everybody, a warm welcome to Wisdom from North, the place where we're diving into the deeper meaning of life and asking the big questions. My name is Jannike and today I'm in Oslo and I have a very fascinating guest on my show today. Her name is Marion Dampier-Jeans. She's a very well-known medium in England and in Scandinavia, and she has written several books including My Life with the Spirits, and she has been collaborating with the police in solving murder cases and even with scientists to prove that the spirit world actually exists. Hello, Marion.
Hello.
Welcome. How are you?
Thank you very much, Did. I'm fine. Nice to be back in Norway again.
Yes, you're here doing a workshop.
That's
so
right.
I know you're very busy, so I'm very happy I got to meet you. And I would love to hear about how it's like being a medium. And I have many questions in my mind, but I want to start with your gift. Because after doing many interviews, I've heard that many are opening up in the midst of their lives. Like something happens, they hit the wall. But you were born with it.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a very, very different things because I can only say that people has to understand I'm born in Denmark. I have a Norwegian mother. So I have gone between two countries in my life. That's why I work a lot in Scandinavia also. But my whole story goes back to my father, who was into spiritualism in Denmark in 1930-ish. So we go many years back when he got involved in spiritualism. And my mother was an independent voice medium from Norway who was also into spiritism and didn't understand it, but had a fantastic rare gift on what we call the physical phenomena. So when those two met and my mother moved into Denmark, and the day I was born, that is when the phenomena started, from the very beginning. And it started with that my father and my mother, of course, was together in the flat in which they lived in just outside Copenhagen. And my mother has just given birth. And my father got me in his lap. The midwife have got, my mother was asleep, and he heard steps coming up of the staircase. And he literally heard footsteps creeping up. And he sat there and he thought, well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Who's coming in? Who can this be? And suddenly his father, who died a little while before, walked straight through the door, stood and looked at my father and saying, hello, Christian, nice to see you again. I just want to let you know that Marion will be. And my father just sat there and he said, I nearly fainted. For the first, you're not supposed to be called Marion. We have chosen the name of Solveig. So they have to give me the name of Marion. And I would be, and my father realized as I was starting to grow up as a child, that I was communicating with something nobody else could see.
Didn't he finish the sentence?
No,
She will
my father fainted. He said, despite I have been into spiritualism, despite I have seen the most fantastic Danish mediums, I have seen various different things. It's quite a shock when your own father walks straight through the door in the clothes we have just buried him in. And everything else like this, he just stood there with a big grin and saying, hello, Christian. And then pointed at me and saying, and Marion would be, and my father went, oh God.
Wow.
And that was it.
Yes.
So when I say I've had it since a child, I've had it since a child. And growing up in Denmark, I remember seeing things, I remember talking about things, and my parents was very sort of, oh, that's nice. But I was left so I could actually develop this myself. So it wasn't that my parents was questioning me at all. I found my own way to the church because that was just something I wanted. My playground was the local churchyard in which we lived opposite. So I got very close to the father, as we call him, or the priest at the time. And he took me under his wings. So when I hear people says, I was born with the ability of being a medium, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't understand that because I was born with the ability in my mediumship, but I knew what I wanted and I knew what I saw. And I have worked on this theory all the way through. If you don't know from a child how I'm just sitting, do you see what I mean? It doesn't make sense. Right. So when I started writing my books in Scandinavia, when I actually used the word, I was born with the ability, not even a gift, just the ability. Everybody else would say, oh, I was also born with it. But you didn't know what to do with it. That doesn't make sense for me.
Oh, okay. And how was it like being a child, having that ability, seeing things that others didn't? I mean, did you talk about it with your friends, or did you keep it as a secret?
No, there was many people who knew about it, but they were very quiet about it. I mean, I could walk in the woodlands with my next door neighbor, and we could just walk along, and they just said, "Oh, come on, Marion, we're all going out for a picnic," and I will go with them. And suddenly you will see me suddenly waving like this, and everybody's saying, "What did you just wave off?" I said, "Oh, the old lady in the house, she just wanted to say hello." And they'll go, "Oh God, you know, the house has been burned down for 40 years. And it was just natural. And everybody today will tell you that. And you know, when I sort of says to my friends in Denmark, some of them is, you know, still friends of mine for many years, and I said, "Well, how did you look upon me?" They said, "Well, you were just Marion, you were a tomboy. You were never afraid of anything. But we always wonder, what in the heck did you do at the graveyard?"
Yes, I read in the book that you spent a lot of time in the cemetery.
Absolutely.
And so what did you do there? Did you like talk to the spirits?
And I was talking to one spirit. There was one little girl there whom I talked to. And, you know, I always remember her because I was always a little bit envious about her dress. She had this beautiful white dress on with puffy sleeves. And I didn't have no white clothing. There was this beautiful sort of, you know, and she had her hairs in pigtails, and she was sort of very well spoken in Danish. And he's always going to say, "Oh, hello," and I said, "Oh, hello." And then we would go around the graves, and she would say, "Oh, this grave doesn't look very nice, does it?" I said, "No, it doesn't." So I would start taking the dead flowers off, and I would start finding other flowers and putting it down, and we would just go around to look at people who was actually also dead. But she was going with me because she was dead.
But did you realize that she was dead? No.
No. So the priest came along.
But was she that physical?
Yes, absolutely. So when the priest came to me, he said to me, "You know, Marion, I have now seen you walking over here for a long time, keep on talking to various different things over here. What's happening?" And I said, "Well, I'm only talking to those you have buried, that's all." And he just stood like this. So there was never anything in life that will frighten me, because it was very honest said.
Right.
As a child.
That was natural for you?
Yeah, it was natural. You know, there she was. We was walking around.
But could you touch her like I can touch you now?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I didn't think she was dead because we did things together. Do you know what I mean? So we just did things together. But there was one thing I never did, and this is as I got older, and I always thought to myself, why didn't I ask where her grave were? But because I didn't think she was dead.
Right.
But she were dead.
Yeah.
Because nobody saw her when I went over there. Every time I went over and I talked to her and we went around and did things, people want to know, who was it I was talking to? And why did I do it? And I said, "Well, you know, my friend." And they couldn't see her.
So I'm wondering, why are some spirits more physical than others? Why did you see it so physical? Because from what I've heard, many are seeing them more like a shadow or something like that.
I think it's because maybe I have another sort of, if you like, ability with me as a physical medium. Things have always been very physical with me.
Okay.
Levitation of tables, moving of objects. Do you see
Really?
what I mean? Yeah. I have that extra bit with me. It's when the condition is right. Do you understand that? And that you can touch spirit. There's no reason why I shouldn't touch them. And also spirit can develop in full light. It's not sitting in darkness holding human hands.
What did you mean by that? They can develop in full light?
Yeah, I mean, this was in the daylight. So they can be seen in the daylight. You don't have to absolutely go into a sound room and sit in the darkness to be able to develop so people can see them. Here we are sitting.
So I'm wondering then what the spirit is. I mean, do they have another body?
No,
type of body?
No, they are a spirit, but they materialize what they look like at that time, so you can recognize them.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about how it's actually possible that you see them? Because I know it has to do with frequencies and vibrations.
It's a frequency of vibration. You seem to link in to that frequency in which they are on. And sometimes you have, I call it a super highway, where I can almost see almost everything because on that frequency I am on, where you can be on the lower frequency and you can't quite see what I'm seeing. And I have proved this many of times within my own family, because that, you know, I've got my children, I've got my husband. And there was once upon a time, it's not that many years ago, I was in bed upstairs and my husband was downstairs, and suddenly my husband come running upstairs, and I thought, oh, well, you know, I've just gone to bed. He wants to go to bed very quickly. And then I heard him running into the toilet. Then he ran into the bedroom where our daughter was sleeping. Then he ran into the guest room and he opened the door, looked in there. And then he stopped. And then suddenly a little boy came into our bedroom, looked at me, dripping wet, totally dripping wet with blonde hair. Then he disappeared. And then my husband came running into our bedroom and he said to me, "Have you by any chance seen a little boy here?" And I went, "Oh yeah." I said, "He's dripping wet." I said, "Yes, he's just been here." And he said, "I saw him downstairs." He looked at me. And then I started tailing him to find out where he was going. So Simon went on to the same frequency as I went on for both of us to see the same thing. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
And that little boy, I had a phone call in the morning from a girlfriend of mine who said that her girlfriend lives on a houseboat and the boy has disappeared. And when I turned the radio on, they said they can't find him. And I went, "Oh my God, he's dead. He's underneath the boat."
Wow.
Yeah.
This really reminds me of the film The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, very much.
Is it like that these spirits that dies, that they, like right after they die, they come to people like you who can see them?
Often that happens, yeah. Often it happens. You can also be in, let us say, you know, which has again happened to me many of times. I can be walking, it could be over a park, it could be anywhere, and suddenly I will stand still complete, and I can't solidly move from the place in which I am. And I'm looking around, and you know that something is really has happened there. What is it? What's going on? And you know that as part of energy, if you like, there is a frequency left behind. We call that often psychometry, is left there. And when I have a good network now because working for the police, I've got a network with the police and all sort of things. And I will phone them up and saying, "Look, I walked at this and this park in London, I sat on this and this bench. What in the heck has happened then?" He said, "Oh, there was a murder 2 days ago."
Wow.
So again, you have picked that up. You can sometimes, as I says to everybody who wants this, you can be unsure of what it is because you might not get the imprint, do you see what I mean, of what happened at that time, but you will get the imprint of what went on. So sometimes you can walk by and you can suddenly see a spirit just walking like this and going, you know, what happened there? But I am not the only one at the same time who can see it. Sometimes we have got more than one who sees the same thing, but most of the time it's very visible for me what is going on.
So when you walk down the street, I mean, can it be confusing sometimes that you can't differ?
It can be confusing, but I have learned to sort of shut myself down and not take note.
Okay.
Because, you know, I could drive a car and it could happen there. Do you know what I mean? All sorts of things like this. So I've actually turned around and said to the world of spirit, "Excuse me, please don't get me into an accident. Please don't do these things to me because I don't think it's funny."
Can they do that, get you into an accident?
Yeah, of course you can. If you are so attuned in all sort of things, do you see what I mean? You can obviously, you know, we gotta realize that the sensitiveness in some mediums can be quite strong. Do you see what I mean? And in the same time, if you are not in control of what it is you're doing, you know, if that chair over there suddenly moves, what will you do? And you don't see anybody. You will jump out of your blooming skin.
I would.
Absolutely.
I would love to see it though.
Do you understand it? So what I'm saying is things can suddenly happen.
Yeah.
You know, so I have asked not to have that given to me. I have to be in control. I don't want to be in an accident. I don't want to open up. I don't want to do anything when I'm in a situation like driving a car or whatever. I want to be in full control. And it has a lot to do with mediumship, is to be in control.
Right. So that means that these spirits, some of these spirits that have passed over to the other side, I mean, some of them can seem very desperate. I mean, if they can put you into an accident, they're not very conscious and aware and maybe mature.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit about the spirits, like why they're coming to you, and if they're in this this place before they cross over? I've never actually understood that. Like, what kind of place are they, and what are they crossing over to? Big question.
A big tall order. That's a big tall order, because there lies many questions and many answers within what you just asked for.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? I mean, a lot of people will always have this theory about spirit hangs onto earth all the time and you don't go properly over, and then we have to have a medium in to cleanse a house,
Right.
and then suddenly you become ghost busting and all
Yes.
that kind of thing, which really irritates me quite a lot.
Okay.
Because we have to realize there is order on the other side of life. There is just some spirit who are more prone to be in a place in which they recognize. And they like to be because they recognize, or maybe there has been, in a sense of it, fear there for a little while. They will go over to the other side.
Eventually.
They will eventually go over. There is order on the other side. Do you understand that? Let us not try to put that confusion into people, you know, and try to make people be afraid of spirit, because I think that a lot of the ghost busting, I have to say, is putting right fear into people constantly, rather than saying, look, there is order on the other side of life. They will rescue them. They will come. And I have worked in situation in England, in particularly, working in the spiritualist churches, in which we have got about 1,000 off at a time. And I have been there, and I have actually sat, and it's a very interesting story, in a circle where I was teaching mediumship. And it was what we call an open circle, that means anybody can walk in. And we were starting the circle, and suddenly in through the door came this very refined lady. And she came and she went, hello. We went, oh, hello. And she just sat down. She didn't say any more than that. And you could hear her accent was absolutely very English, very British. So she sat down. Within 2 minutes after we started, she opened her legs wide, like this, hold herself like this, and with a Cockney accent, she went, "Call blimey, mate, what am I doing here?" And suddenly we all looked at her and we went, hello, what happened there? We know that her name was Rose. I mean, this is what she said she were. And we just looked at her and we said, my God, what's happening? So I stormed over to her, sat in front of her, and I just said, excuse me, but do you know where you are? And she sort of looked at me and said, no, where am I? And we actually had to have a conversation, what's going on? This woman had stood at a bus stop. She was going to a funeral of a friend of hers. She was very, I would say, sort of very saddened for that. Then she totally got confused, ended up going to a spiritualist church in South London, came in, sat in my circle, and then it worked out that she was becoming partly, and when I use the word possessed, I don't mean that. She just have had another spirit who drew very close to her into her aura and stood there and actually took over her speech, her mannerism and everything else. And it worked out too that Daisy, who this lady were, had died in the pub where she was standing at the bus stop. And she was actually a Cockney, because we found out, we did research. But then we took her and brought her over to the other side. And when she came back, Rose, as a proper lady, when she actually came back again, she was completely bewildered of where she were. Because for the first, she's a Roman Catholic. She had nothing to do with spiritualism. She was going to a funeral and she left and we never saw her again. So yes, there can be confusion. This is what I'm saying about people going over to the other side. And for some peculiar reason, she just attached herself to this wonderful, frightfully beautiful, do you see what I mean, lady in her smart clothing going to a funeral. But there must also have been something else with this one. This is what I keep on saying. She was almost like a battery from spirit. Do you understand? She actually was a medium without realizing it. Do you understand? There's a lot of people who has the ability of being a medium, but just don't use it.
And don't know it.
And don't know
perhaps?
it. Yes, absolutely. So now and again, they can suddenly either see spirit, do something else, and then it disappears again. Because that's not of their religion, it's not of their way of life and anything else like that.
Is it like they disappear in a way, that they can't remember what happened?
Yes,
she
absolutely.
was just there. And
yeah, she was there. She was more baffled why she was in a damn spiritualist church. She says, oh, frightfully, that's against my religion. I'm a Roman Catholic. And we thought, oh, well, you've just been helped. Do you realize that? And she just didn't want to know. She just left. But there was a lesson for 50 people. who came to that specific circle.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and people still talk about that today. Yeah. So actually what I would call the phenomenon within spiritualism, things that does happen, you know, is absolutely brilliant. It doesn't happen to everybody. You really have to have that extra, do you see what I mean, to be able to produce all that. Yeah.
So what are the main messages that these spirits have to you? Like, why are they coming to you? Is it to bring on a message?
It is to bring on, for me it has always been, it's not the future. De har lived for the future. De bring through that there's a life beyond this and de can prove it. Okay. That's what it is. But, you know, it has always sort of, I can only say, for years working, of course, in London, in the spiritualist churches, and have seen people coming into our churches. And there was one time, I mean, there's two different stories, and I'll just tell you how that can be too. I was working in it's called Wimbledon Spiritualist Church in London, many, many years ago, and it was in May months, because it was so hot in London. And when I went to the church, they have forgotten to screw the heating down. So you can probably gather hot outside, now hot in a church. And there was something like about 100 people there, or about 90 people or whatever, in the church. I was on the platform, and you have like a table where you got your water, decanter of water and flowers or whatever. And it was so damn hot, I kept on drinking. And in the end of it, there was no water left in my decanter. And Ray Robinson, who was on the chair at the time, said to me, "Marion, would you like me to come and get you some more water?" And I looked at the time and said, "Nah." I said, "Nah, we finished in 5 minutes, so it doesn't matter." Within that, the actual decanter in front of 90 people refilled itself with water. 90 people saw it. We also lost 70 out through the back door. They all ran, because it now become, I can only say, very close to the phenomenon. It came very close to what spiritualism is really about.
Wow.
Do you understand it?
Yeah.
And the rest of them just stood up. So I, you know, brave as hell I was, walked over, took my glass, pulled the water in and drank and said, "Anybody else want some?" No one wanted anything of my water. But it was almost like the taste itself could actually tell you it came from Scotland. Mm. And it was, but that was that many people that saw that. And in another spiritualist church I also were, and it's again, you know, everybody had water, and it was all underneath the chairs everywhere. And I had my water, and suddenly I couldn't find my cup. And I turned around and said, to the chairperson, I said, "Has anybody seen my water?" He said, "You can have mine, but I can't find mine neither." So now 2 of us can't find the water. And then they asked the congregation, have you got water? And all the people's glasses has vanished. And they was all parked in the corner, all on top of each other. I wish we had cameras at that time. You could have taken a photograph of these phenomena. So a lot of things happen spontaneously. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, and especially around you.
Yeah, and people just ran. Just ran. So
I wish I could have seen that.
Do you understand that? But that still happens today. It still happens. I had independent voices when people has been, you know, at my demonstrations. Suddenly you can hear another voice coming up, or furniture has been moved. People has been laid down in the chair, so there's only 2 legs in the background sticking up, and spiritualism laid them back.
Wow.
Loads of things happens. You never know what's going to happen in my demonstration. But I also think it's because I take this so seriously. Mm. It is a life study. And I do not believe in everything. I am a healthy skeptic. You got to prove it, you prove it again. Yeah. Double take all the time. Even if I go and I sit in physical mediumship and I sit in seances and so forth, which I've done for years and years and years. You show me that, you do it again next week. I want to have double take all the time. You cannot show me a phenomenon only once. It has to be something that can be reproduced again, something that has to be shown again. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
That's how life is.
So I will have to ask, can you see anything about me or people that have passed over of my beloveds?
Yeah, never. I never do that with people I sit and do interviews with. I think because I'm not geared to do a conversation with spirit right now. I'm doing something else. I'm talking about the philosophy, the way it works, how it hangs together. So my concentration is somewhere else. Right. If you want to come to me and have a sitting, it's done in London, and then you will have it there, and I will be able to dig into you. Do you see what I mean? It's also extremely private. I feel that sometimes you shouldn't let the whole nation know about what goes on. I'm very quiet in my work, in that sense of it. whoever I work for and whoever comes to me. I've always been extremely, never written about my clients, never written about my cases, never written about anything. It's very quiet and private for me.
So, for instance, could you see if there was anybody here now in this room, or is it crowded here? I mean, I'm seeing nothing, but...
I don't know if there's anybody here, because I haven't opened it up to that extent to be able to see.
Okay.
It would be nice if you do a phenomenon. They normally plays around with the light quite a lot. Okay. You always find, with me specifically, when spirit comes in, you start playing with the lights. You start playing with electricity.
Right.
And the thing, bing, things goes off. You can't film it, you can't see, you can't do anything. And that's known also in Copenhagen. You can also, maybe on your tape there, suddenly get extra voices on, so be aware. This is happening in Copenhagen.
So when it comes, I'm very curious about the work you're doing with scientists, because I read that you really are interested in proving that the spiritual life exists. And actually me too, like I have a very rational mind, and I really want to have investigations on this, like really seriously.
But there has always been an investigation. This is what we all have to understand.
Okay.
You know, for the last 100 years, we have sat with science.
But we don't see it in media?
Yes, you can read about it. It's in historic books. All the scientific research that has been done through universities, through all sort of things. I came back from America last year. I went to Duke University, where I went into the parapsychology department, where I became an official researcher there because of cases I was studying. I want to see the background of it, and it was full of evidence for scientists, from bankers that's been sitting, the money that was involved, and all sorts of things.
But it's not coming out properly.
It is. There's books upon it. Oh yes, there is. The last scientist that I have known, that I knew very much indeed, had just passed over. He was nearly 90.
Okay.
So yes.
So what are the studies you have been involved with, trying to like prove that this is real?
It is actually given part of a sitting and explaining what is happening in some of the things I see and some of the things I hear. And one of them was with a scientist in a hospital this time. He was a scientist for how did the mind develop pre-birth. I think that's how it was. So it was before you were born, as you know, you were conceived, but you weren't born yet. How did the mind develop? And where was the spirit and things like this? So he came home to me with all his things, and we sat there, and I said, just a minute. So of course I turned around and says, well, I'm actually not quite a scientist here, so I need to have some kind of scientific help because I don't understand scientific research. And he then told me that he would prove it to him and he will see it. And I said, well, in which way will this happen? And he said to him that what I don't understand about this was that when I didn't understand how he gets the mind before birth neither. And I was then being told that if there was an abortion and he had developed into so-and-so, and it was somebody who was stillborn or whatever, as an experiment, you know, you were allowed to use the mind or brain or whatever you call it, this kind of thing. And he would then study whatever he had to study. I don't know what it was. And I then said, okay. So I was actually told by Spirit that within a month, he will see the light of Spirit disappearing from the mind. And he will see a green light that will come up to the camera and it will go, just like that. He will actually see that physically.
And did it?
Yes, it was filmed.
It was filmed?
Yeah.
Wow.
He had it as a green light that came out. And he said that was his research, how I could look into his research. What could I see? What could I assembling as a helping hand from the other side of life? What was it? And that's exactly what it was. He came back and told me.
Wonderful.
And then I gave it further to other scientists I knew and said, look, what we have done here, we've done this and this and this. But we also got to remember that scientists, you know, it's not just any scientist you sit with. You know, mathematicians is often part of this, you know, my work. You have somebody who's into mathematically order and things like this. Which is very interesting. Yeah. So the scientists do share the information, but I think that what really are the saddest part about it is that you're always afraid of actually saying what you're doing because of this negative attitude from people being laughed and ridiculed afterwards.
Right.
So you have a lot of people saying nothing, they just keep it. A lot of my clients that comes to me obviously is very well known people, but there's never said anything, it's not in the papers, it's nothing, because they literally are petrified to be ridiculed.
Yeah.
That is the saddest part of it all.
Yeah.
They are so sad for that.
I'm trying to change that.
Yeah, and I think we have to, because every man for itself. You know, we are at a religious war all over the place. There's Muslims and Hindus and Christians and you name it. And we actually bring in now spiritualism into it as being idiots. We have, you know, people who is magicians coming out saying, oh, we can do a levitation of a table just as much as you can. Really? Oh yeah, we can show it. So I said, go on, show it. So they show it to you and they're going, why do you want to do it our way now? Yeah, and we can show now. Yeah, fine. Strip search. Don't have your own clothing on. Into clothing we choose for you. We will examine the room before you go in. We'll have people in there that will not only examine me, examine you, so you have no tools with you. You will be banned to the chair, so you can't bloody move, so nobody can move. Let's see if you can do the same thing. We have given it as a challenge. You can't do it. Mediums can.
Can you do that?
Yeah.
Make things lift, levitate?
Yeah. In our sounds in Copenhagen not so long ago, because I set circles up, we had a table, we had a medium. The medium first, one leg came out, then the other leg came out. Then he levitated out of the cabinet. Then he was just there, then he went back in again.
But I'm like, why don't I see that on television? Like, why don't, you know...
Because we have got skeptical people that will ridicule it from the very beginning. And then he will turn around and he will say, trickery.
Yeah,
we are filming it.
That.
We have films all the time.
We
film it all the time. And our last levitation was of a table. It lifted itself up to the air. And in the end of it, even the tallest person in the sounds room couldn't even hold up to it. So it just went up, turned its feet, sat up in the air, and then just went straight back down to the ground again, like that.
But how is that possible, actually, like explain in a scientific way? Is it that you're holding it up with the energy, or is it actually a spirit that is like lifting it?
It is part to do what we call it exoplasm. It is an extra bit that mediums have. And it is where both spirit can develop. You can also do it with energy-based energy, but it is a combination. Do you see what I mean? It's a combination of everything that you can make things just levitate. There has been mediums in the past in England. I haven't seen it, I haven't been part of it. But there has been people who has been taken in to a place where they have got billiard tables, and you know how heavy they are?
Yeah.
And levitated it.
Wow.
And you have also got mediums who levitate in the chair and levitates through the walls. They actually dismaterialize and materialize them again out through the window and into the next room.
Oh my goodness. I love
so
hearing about this.
There's quite a lot going on.
A lot of possibilities.
Absolutely. But it's always this kind of things that as soon as you start with this one, you will have we call them debunkers, which means they're not even skeptic, because a skeptic person has an open mind until they have done a big research, then understood what is happening, where a debunker don't believe in anything, don't even want to. We have all these kind of challenge coming up saying, you know, if you can prove it. What do you mean if you can prove it? I mean, how long have you been in to do this studying for? And you actually find out they have been into no studying at all. They have never sat for physical mediumship. They have never sat for years.
Yeah.
They have never really got into understand what is it. If a scientist were to come in and sort of say to people, I will come in because, not because you have to prove it, but I would like to come in to work with it. It's different. In the other way, this going in and saying, oh, you have to prove it. We don't have to prove a damn thing to you. Not a thing. Absolutely nothing. Do you prove that Jesus walked on the water? Hello? Just because you cannot see the air, does it mean you don't breathe? You cannot see the air. It's natural. You take the air, you breathe.
We can't see our text messages going through the air, you know, there's so many things we can't see.
There's so many things.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's very, very difficult, but you have got just these skeptical people who have such a close mind, known as debunkers, rather than being skeptical.
Yeah, I agree.
You know.
So just the last question, like when we die, is there something to fear there, or is it just all good, nothing to worry about?
I've never been there. I have to say, I never died yet.
from what the spirits are telling you.
No, did you all turn around and says, if only I have known more upon this, it would have been fantastic.
Okay.
And if you go into a hospital, you sit with people who's dying and so forth, you often see them stretching their hands, smiling, looking, this kind of thing, you know. So I would say no, there's no fear. I think that people are perhaps a bit apprehensive over things they don't know and don't understand.
Sure.
You see, part of dying or even heaven are never described in any school. Christianity in the Nordic countries or in Europe or whatever you are as Christian always describe you go to heaven when you die. But you don't actually describe what heaven is.
No, not at all.
Do you understand it? Do you describe death?
Yeah.
But you don't describe what it is.
Yeah.
And yet again, the one character who came through and actually proven with 100% fact, if you listen to the Bible, was Jesus himself. He came out of his grave, he walked along, he met his mother and some of his disciples. He goes up to the table, he asked Tom, the doubter, do not touch me, I'm not whole yet. They all can see him after his death. And yet the Christian attitude doesn't exist. But Jesus died, he came back, he showed himself. Do not add and subtract from the Bible, that's what it says. But it just tells you there that Jesus, the man himself, walked as a dead person, physical, materialized to his disciples. And yet the Christian denies it.
So heaven is a good place, or afterlife is a good place.
It's a nice place to be. I hope. I know.
I hope too. We wouldn't know.
I mean, I have never yet come across a spirit who has been so aggressive towards me. I have always met them with full enthusiasm and have something to say.
But I think perhaps, because I've been doing so many interviews about, near-death experiences, and I think perhaps, you seem like a very light person, and if we draw in the law of attraction, maybe that's what you attract in good experiences.
I think it's a positive.
With spirits.
Yeah, it's a positive and negative, often goes hand in hand. You have to realize that. You can hardly separate that. It's called the gray zone in the middle. And I have always just looked for something that's very good, that's very light. But do not misunderstand Marion. I do understand the dark. I have seen it. I have been there. I have studied it.
Okay.
I have had to.
Right.
It's called protection. It's be aware that they also exist. Luckily enough, I have so many good priest friends around me I can discuss the Bible with. I have all kind of holy men because I have a network of people. And I am never afraid as a medium asking questions or asking another medium a question or working together with another medium or working together with the church or anything else like that, where I find that specific in Scandinavia, we are all apart. We rip each other apart constantly in sense of having a network where we could work together. I learned that in England very fast. If I wanted to learn something, there will always be another medium available to be able to give me the next helping hand.
That's wonderful.
This is not here.
Let's hope it will come.
I hope so. I'm still clicking people around the ears in Scandinavia. Because one thing is that I don't think the world know. But I tell you, okay, the Nordic countries has a history of the most fantastic mediums has been scientifically researched over years. And what do we not have in Norway and Sweden and Finland? We have the Sami people who are extreme close to Earth and has done their own communication in all sort of way for years. Go a trip into Greenland, where I have also worked. What have you got there? You have also got Animea, you've got all sort of spirit communicators for years. Do you understand? It's in our history. It's in our background. We have got it. But it's like if the Scandinavian and the Nordic countries don't trust their own garden. They have to look to America. They have to look to England. Why in the heck not here, where it exists?
It's true.
Do you understand that? This has been my fight for years and years since I come back, and think, for Christ's sake, the Nordic countries have got something just as much as any other country has got, but we don't accept it. We look somewhere else.
I let that be the last words. Thank you so much, Marion.
You're welcome.
And good luck with this weekend with your workshops.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching, guys. Remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't before. Much light. Bye-bye.